Welcome to Mississippi State Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Miller, joined by my co-host, Christian Ballard. And we're here for the most important preseason show that we are going to have done here on this network to this point. Christian, it's prediction time.
I know it is. I'm nervous, but I'm also very excited because I say nervous because you always want to be as right as you possibly can and be as accurate when the season kicks off, but you never take into account injuries or upsets or anything like that. But it's here, and that's the fun part is predicting. And for all those who are going to hate us later for our predictions, we love you anyway. So
Yeah, I'll say I have no problem giving my predictions, but I'm also I'm definitely not one that I enjoy when it gets thrown back in my face. That's why I'm not big of a hot take guy. I try to keep as realistic as possible with what I
yeah.
put out there. But yeah, that's going to be the big thing for today's episode is we're going to get into talking about this 2025 season for Mississippi State, year 2 for Jeff Lebby's program after 2-10 a year ago and 0-8 in the SEC, the worst season the program had in more than 2 decades. You now turn away from that, and it's like, okay, can you take that step forward? You need to see to show improvement here in year 2. That's going to be the big thing, and we got a lot to break down. There's a lot of excitement, but also some question marks on the offense. Obviously, a ton of questions about the defense, but you kind of think things can only get better on that side of the ball. A daunting schedule that the Bulldogs have to deal with that we're going to give our thoughts on. Yeah, we're going to give predictions for all of it. We're going to give you our thoughts for the offense, who's going to be some of the leaders of the key stats, some stat predictions, same for the defensive side of the ball. And when it's all said and done, we're going to give game-by-game predictions for Mississippi State for 2025. I mean, we haven't even said it yet. Week 0 is here. Like college football is back. I mean, by the time you're listening to this, we're going to be having games this weekend. I cannot wait to watch that game over in Dublin between Farmageddon. So Kansas State and Iowa State taking on each other. It's kind of weird to have that big rivalry taking place overseas, but that's going to be a ton of fun to kick off the season. Some cool G5 games, week 0. I love the week 0 action. It's a great little taste to get into things. And next week, we're breaking down Mississippi State, traveling to Hattiesburg for week 1, taking on Southern Miss. So a lot of fun. A lot of fun just in general for us to watch this coming weekend, but a lot of fun content coming up here over the next week because it's time for the season to kick off. College football is back. That said, before we get
excited,
go ahead.
I just want to say I'm excited, and it's been one heck of an off season. It feels like it's taken forever as it usually does, but it just feels like a breath of fresh air right now just to have the season back. But let's get into it, Andrew.
Well, before we can get into the predictions, we do have some major news to talk about that broke on us here this afternoon, and we'd be remiss to not get into it. Officially, the SEC has announced they are adopting a 9-game conference schedule starting in 2026. This is something that has been talked about a lot. Really, before it's been going on for years. Obviously, the debate for many, many years over 8 versus 9 conference games for the SEC. It was true when the SEC was at 14 teams, whether or not that they needed to move to a 9-game conference schedule. Once Texas and Oklahoma joined the league, everyone just sort of assumed, okay, you got a 16-team conference. There's no way you don't move to 9 SEC games per year. But obviously, those teams joined the league last season, and a few years ago it was announced that short term, we weren't going to get a 9-game conference schedule. It was just going to be 8 conference games, as the SEC has been doing for a very long time now. They would just sort of put together the schedules as they could, give every team the main rivalry games that they needed to get played, and sort of just try to balance things out from there. And that's just what they would roll with. And we thought, okay, well, that's 1 year for 2020. That we'll do that for 2024. For 2025, we'll have a new answer. Well, they couldn't settle on anything. You couldn't decide the format. So what we did for 2025 is we're taking the exact same schedule as we had in 2024. It's still 8 games, but now we're just going to flip all the opponents home and away. So just to keep things simple. But that kind of created a situation going into 2026. We better get something figured out. You have to determine long-term what the format was going to be. And ultimately, the SEC decided on a 9-game conference schedule where each team will have 3 permanent opponents that they get to play annually, prioritizing rivalries. So, games like, obviously for Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl is going to get played every single year. It's just a matter of what those 2 other games will be. But for a team like Alabama, where you have multiple big time rivalries with Auburn, LSU, Tennessee, theoretically, you could play all 3 of those teams in a given year while still, over the remaining 6 conference games, you're going to rotate through the rest of the league. And what this will allow is that over a 2-year period, you will see every team in the league at least once. Over a 4-year period, which in theory would be the length of time that a player's at college, but these days guys are jumping from school to school, so I don't know how much it applies. But if you were to stay in college for 4 years, you would get to see every single team within your conference, both home and away, at least once, which gives you both that true connection of a conference that the SEC has lacked previously, and that Texas A&M and Georgia have played one time since A&M joined the league in 2012. We're going on now 15 years that those teams have been together in the same conference, and they've played once. We're avoiding situations like that going forward. We're also avoiding losing major rivalries. That was kind of one of the big talking points. Had you gone to an 8-game conference schedule, it was the likely format was going to be a 1+7 model, where each team has 1 permanent rival and then 7 rotating games that they play home and away, which allows you to see every team in the league, again, twice, both home and away over a 4-year period. But the problem there is you'd lose a lot of rivalry games. For Mississippi State, where the only game you really have to get played is the Egg Bowl, okay, that's your one rival. But for teams like an Alabama or an Auburn or a Georgia, where you have multiple major games that you want to see played annually, to have a situation where you have to only get one of those games was not going to be ideal for the SEC. So it seemed inevitable. This is the format that they were going to adopt. The questions were going to be, obviously the questions going forward are who are those 3 teams going to be for each team, who are the permanent rivals going to be. There's also the question of what does it mean for the non-conference scheduling requirement. The SEC currently has it in place that every team must play at least 1 power conference opponent in the non-conference slate each year. So somebody from the Big Ten, ACC, or Big 12, and then previously Pac-12. But obviously that conference is now gone. Well, not gone, it's back, but it's no longer a power league. What were they going to do with that? Because, you had a schedule where everybody was going to play 9 power conference opponents a year. If you had a conference game, that's a 9th game. What do you do with that? It is staying in place. So now, and they did say that they would, revisit this going forward. Every SEC team is still going to have to play at least 1 marquee opponent in the non-conference. So you're talking about every SEC team having 10 power conference games a year. All of this makes plenty of sense from the SEC perspective. I fully understand why the SEC would want to go this way. How it impacts Mississippi State could be a little bit of discussion, but we'll get into that here in a sec. Christian, first, I just want to get your thoughts on the SEC moving to 9 games. Obviously, as an Alabama fan, you bring a little bit of a different perspective here. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is the right move for the SEC, just in general, where they're headed?
Well, I will say it's no surprise that it moved to this. I think we knew for a couple years that it was going to happen. The question was when, and they finally decided on next year. But part of me was like, 8 games is fine. 8 games is fine. But then I'm like, no, man, like that whole idea, like getting for a long time up until last year, right before rivalry weekend and Thanksgiving, it was always resting up for your rival, which I could get that. That makes some sense to me. I'm not going to diminish that or anything. If they need a break or a bye or whatever, or a breather game where they blow out Mercer or the Citadel, then it's going to happen. But 9 conference games gives you the ability, and we saw games like Alabama, Oklahoma. I'm trying to think. Everyone, I think Georgia had like A&M or somebody, but you had all these conference games before your rival. Um, But, not to put a lot of emphasis on that particular weekend, but I think what it really helps with is when you look at the SEC now having 16 teams. If you keep expanding it, and it's possible that in a few years we're probably going to get more teams. I don't know, but there have been a lot of people out there that say we should, or we will, or we won't, or whatever. It Going to 9 conference games lets you not take forever on letting your team, like Alabama, like Georgia, like Mississippi State, play these other opponents that they've only played a handful of times in history, and it happens once every decade or something. So going to 9 gives you a better chance of making sure within a decade or so you get every team in, but you also get them in possibly multiple times. Just to throw out a decade for an example there, but
Well, but it's accurate because we've seen those situations where teams have gone a decade only playing a team once.
well, like, okay, so like Alabama, they went to South Carolina in 2019, right? They have to go this year. They like last year when they played South Carolina in Tuscaloosa. That hadn't happened, Andrew, since like '08 or '09. It's kind of ridiculous how we had it all messed up like that. Like you're meaning to tell me that you're in the same conference with somebody, but you're only seeing them every 10, 15 years. It seems like, unless you meet up in the conference title. But anyways, I just wanted to rant a little bit, but
No, for sure. That was an issue with the old format, and it's not even just who you're seeing; it's where you're playing them.
right.
Mississippi State hosted Georgia in 2010. Their next 3 times they played Georgia: 2011, 2017, 2020. Those games were all played in Athens. Now, then in
Wow.
2022, the other Bulldogs came to Starkville for a return trip, but they played them frequently enough. Although, again, 2010 to 2017, that was a 7-year gap between playing Georgia. But even once you got them back, you were playing all those games on the road before finally getting it back in Starkville. So, to kind of your point, in order for the SEC to assure that you are actually having that connectivity across the conference and you are playing the teams within your league while also maintaining rivalries, which that is the biggest thing for me is maintaining the rivalries. That is what defines college football still for me are those rivalries. That's what sets this sport apart. In order to have both the rivalries and the connectivity of a 16-team league, going to a 9-game conference schedule was the only way you were going to accomplish that. So I fully understand why this would be the format that the SEC would go with. Add in the fact that you are getting, by keeping that non-conference opponent requirement for a Power Four, with every team playing 10 Power Conference games, you have potentially 10 games in the schedule that more people are going to be interested in. They're going to get more viewership. You potentially get more attendance to games. All of that leads to more money for the conference. So I fully get it from an SEC perspective. Now, this is a Mississippi State show, and we got to talk about the Mississippi State perspective.
Yeah.
While it may be good for the SEC, this is not great for Mississippi State. The reality for this program, even for a program that, excluding the current circumstances they're trying to build up out of the abyss, has seen a lot of success since 2010 and have had a lot of good seasons. Shout out to our guy Reese. He just got here. Can we start over? I'm looking forward to having Reese check in. Like I want Reese to get in like the last minute of a show one day and ask us if we can start over. That'd be a lot of fun.
Like imagine we go for like an hour and a half and it's like, all right, that about does it. And then he's like, can y'all start over?
That'd be great.
It's awesome.
No, but for Mississippi State to have had quite a bit of success in this modern era and had years where they jumped up and had good seasons, were going to bowl games regularly, the reality is that this is a program where it's tough to win. And this is a program where most seasons the baseline expectation is, okay, can you find a way to get to a bowl game? That sort of sets the baseline of like get to a bowl. Now, obviously, there's certain years where like 2018 where expectations were a lot higher than simply going to a bowl game, which is why that was a year where State won 8 games. It wasn't good enough. Then you have other years where it's like, hey, man, like right now, if you told Mississippi State wins 6 games, that'd be overachieving. So obviously it depends year by year, but this is a program where, again, it's difficult. And you were talking about now having 10 games a season that are, frankly, not ever going to be gimmies. And when we talk about the goal being bowl eligibility as a baseline for what you want to achieve here, you only get 2 games a year now that you would say in a given season, that's a win for Mississippi State. Yeah. I don't think State will stop playing FCS games. State will obviously continue to play a regional G5 opponent. So those are going to be your 2 games a year that you say, all right, that's a win. Well, now I got to find 4 wins between my other power conference non-con game, who it's this year, you're talking about a top 12 Arizona State team that expects to go to the playoff. You know, are you going to get a team like that? You could get a team like that, or you could get a team like what we thought Arizona State was going to be a few seasons ago, and it's terrible. And if they're terrible, okay, cool, you got another win. The problem is we don't know what that team's going to be. You can't just chalk that up as a given year like, oh, yeah, you'll win that game. And then you add another SEC game to the schedule. Are there SEC teams on the slate Mississippi State can consistently compete against? Absolutely. There's only one team in the SEC that most years, if you're a Mississippi State fan, you're going to say that that is an automatic win. And that's Vanderbilt. And I know right now Vanderbilt, they're having a good season. They're having a lot of success. I'm talking overall for the programs. Usually Mississippi State's in a better place than Vanderbilt. But teams like, now in a given year, Arkansas, Kentucky, we saw it with Ole Miss not that long ago. Those are teams that have had some really down moments, which that's where Mississippi State is right now. There have been years that you look at Mississippi State against those teams and say, yeah, okay, that's a win. We can find 6 wins easy. The point I'm getting at, though, is it's not a guarantee. Those are teams that you were competing with within the conference. So when we start talking about that path to a baseline of bowl eligibility, it's going to be tougher to find that going forward because you're going to get more games on that schedule that you can't just say, oh, yeah, like you are always going to be able to find 6 wins against this schedule. You're just not going to have that going forward. That's going to change things for this program. And again, you might get a year where you luck out. You might get a team where your power conference, non-conference team is terrible, and you get all of the bottom teams in the SEC in a given year, and you jump up and like you have on a year where you're having a lot of success and you win a bunch of games. That can happen.
Yeah.
But the other thing you got to keep in mind, and this is where that extra SEC game matters. Most of the teams in the SEC have more resources than Mississippi State. Most of the teams in the SEC, because they have more resources, have more talent, and talent ultimately wins out in college football overall, which means most of the time when Mississippi State plays an SEC opponent, they're playing a team that is more talented than them, which means the odds of them winning are lower. Now, people will counter about overrated teams and will counter about all the years that Mississippi State under Dan Mullen and under Mike Leach jumped up and beat teams that were more talented on paper. That can still happen. Do you know how many times with State having a lot of good years, how many times has Mississippi State had a winning SEC record in the last 25 years?
Not much. I know that. I don't know the exact number, but it's really, in recency, it's not much for sure. I mean, I'm sure you can find a couple years under like Mullen or whoever, but
you can find one. In 2014, they went 6-2 in the SEC, and that is the year where you have your best coach in program history, probably your best roster in program history, and the best single player in program history in Dak Prescott. And you went 6-2. That's it. You got a handful of 4-4s. You've gone 500 a few times. You've had a winning SEC record once. The average number of SEC wins over the last 25 years for Mississippi State has been 2.8. They've averaged 2.8 SEC wins per year. Now, you've got some really bad seasons in there. You got a couple 0-8s. You got some 1-7s. Those are obviously dragging down the total a little bit. But that also reflects to when you have over 2 decades of data on a program, that's a pretty good sign of where the program can and can't go. So you start talking about 2.8 conference wins. If we go back to 2012 SEC, where you're playing 8 conference games, and the non-conference, you don't have to play any power conference opponents out of your SEC slate. State was basically scheduling 4 gimme wins a year. We're going to play a couple teams from Conference USA, a team from the Sun Belt, and we'll play an FCS school. And that should be 4 automatic wins. Well, you get 4 automatic wins plus 2 to 3 conference wins, you're going to a bowl game.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately now, you only get 2 should-be wins. So if we say 2 to 3 conference wins, we're talking about a program that is, and look, we'll say a 50-50 shot on, we'll give it a 50-50 shot on whatever the non-conference game is that's against a big opponent. We're basically talking about a team that's like averaging between 5 and 6 wins most seasons. As like, that's including the upper echelon years. That's including the years where you jump up and have good seasons. So, man, it's going to be tough. And you kind of start to wonder, do expectations have to be adjusted a little bit for this program? I don't know. But life is getting harder for Mississippi State. But by changing schedules is going to make things more difficult for this program to achieve the type of goals that fans are hoping for.
Yeah, and you mentioned the expectations. Like, it's one of those things that I feel like we go to 9 games in the conference, the expectations are just going to get lower. Like, well, just win a couple games here or there in the FCS, and then go win. Just try to get some SEC wins. Right now, this year, which I know they're coming off probably their worst ever record in program history at 2-10. I get like we've talked about it, like the goal is to get close to bowl eligibility, 5-7, or if you can 6-6, or get the offense clicking or do something. But a few years ago, man, it was like, win your conference games, compete for the SEC, show why it's the best conference. And now it's like we know the SEC is the best conference. Stop talking Big Ten, please. But we know it's a dominant conference, and Mississippi State knows that. We know where they are, but at the same time, like it's almost as if the bar's been lowered for Mississippi State and what needs to happen outside of, obviously, I'm sure, the fan base and the inside people at Mississippi State. But from a national standpoint, Andrew, I feel like it's like, just win some games and you'll be fine for Mississippi State. Or am I missing the point here?
No, I mean, look, and to be fair, the bar, frankly, is a little bit lower for the entire conference. So this is something, even for the teams at the top of the league, this was a point that I heard reiterated a lot last year, that there are SEC fans of schools like Alabama, Georgia, who have been at the top of the league, that have to suddenly start to recognize going 12-0 is probably not happening anymore.
Yeah.
Going 11-1 is going to be really difficult going forward. 10-2 and sometimes even 9-3 is maybe a really, really good year for teams that, again, had that expectation of perfection from where things have been in the past. The conference got tougher by adding Texas and Oklahoma. When you add two programs that are blue bloods, 2 programs that at various points in recent history have been playoff contenders. And, I know Texas, they've put themselves right into the mix within the SEC. Oklahoma, we'll see what's happening with that program, but it's not like we're talking about a team that's bottomed out. They still have roster talent that is on par with the upper half of the league. Adding those teams in already made life a little bit tougher. Now you're adding another conference game. And Alabama or Georgia's chances of taking another loss are also higher. This doesn't just impact Mississippi State. The difference is, though, when you're a team like Mississippi State and you are towards the bottom tier of the league and you are scratching and clawing to find a way to just have a solid season, things get tougher for you. The teams at the top of the league, they're still looking at it like, okay, but we can still go to the playoff with this. We can still win the conference with this. finding 6 wins is going to be tougher going forward for a program like Mississippi State. It's going to be tougher for Arkansas, Kentucky. I know Ole Miss is in a really good spot right now. We'll see if that continues for the program going forward. Historically, though, they're in that same tier. It's going to be tougher for South Carolina going forward, Missouri going forward. And again, I know Mizzou also, like Ole Miss, is having some success right now. But we get the wider point. It makes life tougher, but the impact is going to be greater for the teams towards the bottom of the league where, again, you have to scratch and claw to find wins. And, life's tougher here on the margins. It's going to change things for Mississippi State. And are the expectations of the fan base going to change? I don't know. Fans always expect a little bit more. I know there's still a lot of fans who expect this program to, at a minimum, get back to where Dan Mullen had it. And I think a lot of them think and see a program that there's no reason you can't jump up and you start having more frequent years where you're able to, have a breakthrough and potentially compete for a playoff spot. That's difficult. You're a long, long ways away from getting to that point. But even for the goal of getting back to being a team that's regularly winning 8 or so games, that's going to be really tough going forward. So, it's a big change. As I laid out, I fully understand why the SEC went this route. I can't blame them at all. But it's going to make things difficult on Mississippi State. I guess to close out here the discussion before we start getting into the preview, who do we think the 3 permanent opponents are going to be for Mississippi State? We know one. They're going to play Ole Miss every single year. Who do you think?
Yeah, so we need 2. Yeah, 2 more. So who do we think it will be? Let me ask you this, because I'm not studied Mississippi State my whole life. I'm not that guy. But let me ask you this, Andrew. Who should it be? Because as much as I would love to bring those teams back for Alabama, you probably won't have them as permanent opponents. But I could see, I don't know, if I had to just take a guess, my gut says Texas A&M and maybe a team like Florida along with Ole Miss. I don't know. But what are your thoughts?
So I don't think
just
Florida
thinking off the top of my head there, by the way. I don't know.
I don't think Florida would be in that group. I feel like a few years ago, I did see a random prediction that had Mississippi State and Florida put together, but that one wouldn't really work. I think the Gators have a few other teams that they're going to get Tennessee and Georgia every year, and then it's a matter of who the other one is. Texas A&M, a lot of people have talked about. I can see that one for sure, because the fact of the matter is, A&M has – I know they've kind of had pseudo rivalries with Arkansas and with LSU. There's something there. They have the one game. It's Texas. They have to play Texas. And also, I know Oklahoma's an old conference opponent of theirs. Oklahoma and Texas A&M really don't care about each other. So that's not like a we have to play each other type game. But so A&M is a team that has some openings. That's the thing you have to consider is if you're a team that does not have a lot of must-be-played rivalries, you're probably going to get paired up with a team that also doesn't have a lot of must-play rivalries. And I could see Texas A&M being one of those. There's a lot of similarities between the team. There's a lot of tied history between the team, interestingly enough, with a few different coaches who have been on who've been at the programs before. So I could see Texas A&M for sure. The one that I've talked about a lot that I think makes sense is Kentucky. Kentucky is a team that's in an interesting spot where they do not have a true SEC rival. I know in football, that is. Kentucky, Tennessee is a rivalry. But when I say a true SEC rival, I mean both sides I won't even do the both. No, both sides view it as we've got to play this game. And Tennessee fans really don't care whether they play Kentucky or not. It's just.
I don't even know if it would be. I think if they had one, because it's been played a lot, I feel like for Kentucky it would be Florida. But even I don't know how the Florida fans feel, so I'm gonna agree with you here.
There's been talk about Kentucky and Florida when people have laid this out, because most people thought the 3+6 model would be what would be adopted. Kentucky, Florida has come up a lot. Kentucky, Tennessee has also come up because there was a stretch where Kentucky and Tennessee played each other on the last week of the season. That was a thing that happened for a period. So, like, it's not a game that means nothing. But Tennessee obviously cares significantly more about playing Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. They also have the in-state opponent of Vanderbilt. Like, they're going to play Vanderbilt every year. So,
True.
like, you have more teams that Tennessee is going to prioritize. I'm not saying Tennessee couldn't get Kentucky because I think that's who Kentucky fans would most want. But that's not a huge rivalry. So I say all this to say Kentucky's going to have open spots. Mississippi State is a team that I think makes a lot of sense to be paired up with. The teams were permanent rivals when the SEC East and West was created in 92. They got paired together and played each other every single year up until, I guess, 2023. Oh, sorry, up until this season. 2023 was the last time they played. So we've gone 1 year without playing.
Yeah, that's right. Because everyone had, or most everyone in the SEC had that cross division rival, they called it, and
Everyone
it was
did
Kentucky and Mississippi State. Yep.
Yeah, for a while, a lot of teams had two. Actually,
yeah,
that was a back in the 90s. That was the case, and ultimately they cut it down to just one.
I feel like didn't Alabama had Tennessee? We always had Tennessee, but did we not play Florida on a regular outside of SEC titles or something?
No,
I don't even know.
Alabama's, I think, might have been Vanderbilt. So it was this back in the 90s. This is going way back, and the reason Florida played Auburn. That's like people don't realize Florida and Auburn used to be a big SEC game. Because that is, I believe Florida is actually the closest team. Florida and Auburn like closest to each other within the SEC. It's the closest SEC campuses are Alabama, Mississippi State. But like for those opponents, the closest one is actually, I think Auburn is closer to Florida or Florida's closest to Auburn, is I guess is what it is. Because I guess Auburn would be closer to Alabama. But the closest SEC team to Florida is Auburn. So those teams used to play a lot. And when the SEC first went to divisions, Florida always wanted to play Auburn. But Georgia always wanted to play Auburn too. So Auburn got Georgia and Florida as their permanents. And they kind of went from there. So anyway, we're getting way off track here. Mississippi State, Kentucky was one of those games. And I will say that's a series that's been very competitive over the years. That's a series that at a certain point reached some bad blood. Honestly, in the like 2016 through 2019, like there was legit hatred on the field between two fan bases that otherwise shouldn't care about each other. But I think that's a game that makes a lot of sense for both sides. The other one, like I said, Texas A&M could be. There's going to be a lot of people that say Alabama. And the reason they're going to say Alabama is, I kind of already mentioned it, closest teams together. And Mississippi State is Alabama's most played opponent historically. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people would think it was Auburn, but there was a long stretch that the Iron Bowl did not get played. Mississippi State is Alabama's most played opponent.
Yeah.
The only reason Mississippi State and Alabama would get paired together is so that Alabama does not have to play three top-tier teams every single year. Because Alabama's three biggest games are Auburn, LSU, Tennessee. On an annual basis, those are the three big games on Alabama's schedule. And Nick Saban himself, when they were first discussing this format a few years ago when he was still head coach, publicly complained that they were talking about giving Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, LSU every single year because it's not fair that those three games are far tougher than what everybody else would get. I will also say it is very funny that Nick Saban did this right after Tennessee beat. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to trash talk Alabama to you, but it's very funny.
Hey.
Saban did this for the first time after Tennessee beat him for the first time in his career. When Tennessee was sucking, Saban did not care about having Tennessee on that schedule every year. The second Tennessee got good, all of a sudden it's a problem that we have to play the Vols every single year alongside LSU and
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I remember when he was saying it in like a presser, or maybe he like was said it in an interview or something. I don't remember where he said it, but I saw a quote and I said, "Ain't that some stuff right there, Nick?"
I mean, the argument is that the whole argument that they were basically trying to get is that every team in the SEC should not no team in the SEC should have to play three permanent games. If we're going to do this idea of permanent schedule or permanent opponents, they should try to balance it out as much as possible, and that no one should have to have 3 games against the upper tier. But I would say if those are your 3 biggest rivals, you should have to play them. But a lot of people wanted to pair Mississippi State and Alabama together, basically to throw Alabama a bone. Was what that boiled down to. I will be pretty ticked off if the return of the Battle of Highway 82 is made permanent once again. I'm perfectly fine not having that game. Perfectly fine not having that game on the schedule every single year. One that I came up with that I think is interesting is actually in the other team within the state of Alabama is Auburn. Mississippi State, interestingly enough, is also Auburn's most played opponent. State's also LSU's most played opponent. State played those 3 teams a lot. And also, if you look in the history, Mississippi State played those games almost exclusively on the road because State's athletic department was too incompetent to ask Alabama, LSU, or Auburn or require them to have to come to Starkville or even Jackson to come play them. We just said, yeah, we'll go on the road and take our beating every single year. That's great job by the old heads in the MSU athletic department years ago for doing that. But Mississippi State and Auburn have played quite a bit. They're not too far apart. There's a lot of history there. There's been a lot of big and fun games between the two sides. Obviously you had the game in 2014 where it was the battle for number 1 in the country. But there have been that's also been a game that for both programs when they were together in the SEC West, there were a lot of years where that game dictated who ended up having a good season. There was a stretch where that game was pivotal for both sides. And I think, yes, historically Auburn has had a lot more success than Mississippi State, but there was a run there for a while where this was a fun competitive series with a lot of really good games between the two teams. So I wouldn't mind if State and Auburn got paired up. There's been a lot of fun games between the two teams. But, yeah, I think Ole Miss and Kentucky are 2 I would lock in. And then after that, either Texas A&M or Auburn I think would make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I mean, is there really with Mississippi State's permanent opponents outside of Ole Miss? I mean, there's a couple obviously different, like, let's say candidates to choose from. And I'm not saying that like, oh, you got 15 other teams or 14 if you exclude Ole Miss, but I don't think there's like a set in stone it has to be these teams. But I think the teams you had mentioned were right on point.
Yeah, and look, for Mississippi State, it can go a lot of different ways simply due to the fact that, again, they don't outside of Ole Miss, there's not a game that has to be played, which as a result opens the door that they could get paired with almost anyone. Like you mentioned Florida earlier, that's not like completely out of the question that could happen. Mississippi State and South Carolina, for one, as I talked about, teams used to have 2. When this first started, teams had 2 permanent crossovers. South Carolina was the other one for Mississippi State alongside Kentucky. There was a long stretch they played Kentucky and South Carolina every single year. Mississippi State men's basketball, along with playing Ole Miss, because if you remember a few years, the SEC used to have, you had the 3 teams that you played home and away every single year. Mississippi State's 3 were Ole Miss, obviously, Alabama, which this is the one where I don't mind because that was an SEC basketball rivalry in the 2000s and 90s between Mississippi State and Alabama. The other one was South Carolina, which 2 teams that don't care about each other whatsoever, but they got paired up for basketball. So maybe South Carolina could get paired with Mississippi State for football. I don't know. I would think I don't know that they'll get Kentucky State. It could go a whole lot of different ways, but you're certainly hoping that you get 3 games that you're hoping you get at least 2 games. I won't bank on 3. Can you get 2 that most years you think you have a chance of finding a win? That's kind of your best bet. But, yeah, moving to the 9-game conference schedule, it's going to change a lot. It's going to make life more difficult for Mississippi State, but ultimately they're going to have to adapt and get ready to move forward with it.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the voice of college football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
So we went way longer talking about the SEC scheduling news than I think we were expecting to. Because it's supposed to be the prediction show. We're supposed to be talking about Mississippi State, and we turned that into basically a whole podcast in and of itself.
Clickbait. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
It is time to talk about Mississippi State football for 2025. It's time to make our predictions for the year. We're going to give our whole breakdown. And look, we have big time episodes talking about the offense. We talked about the defense. We've got episodes talking about different segments of the schedule. So if you want to learn about Bulldogs non-conference games, their home SEC games, their away SEC games, there is a show out there for all of those. So if you want the deeper intel on the Bulldogs, those are going to be the places for you to turn to for the predictions preview for the year. But it's time to start talking about this team and make our final predictions. Offensively, this is the side of the ball that everyone has their eyes on in terms of excitement, right? Jeff Lebby was hired because he is a guy that is known for being able to put a bunch of points on the board. And you have a lot of fun watching these teams while they do it. Year one, Mississippi State didn't quite get that. They had some flashes. They had some moments. They had times where you saw what the Lebby offense can be, the offense we saw him run at Oklahoma, and we saw him run at Ole Miss, and we saw him run at UCF. We saw flashes of it. We didn't get it consistently. And now you go into this second season, you had a lot of transfers along the offensive line. You've loaded up in the running back room, brand new receiving core, and you get Blake Shapen back at quarterback after he was injured and missed, most of last season. Year two in the system for Shapen. Again, a lot of interesting pieces and a lot of new faces. The idea is, can this offense take a major step forward and look more like we were hoping the Bulldog offense would look like when Jeff Lebby was hired? So let's start there. What are the things we are most excited about, Christian, when we look at this Mississippi State offense? Going into this year, like you're saying, I see that and that's going to be a ton of fun to watch.
First thing that jumps out to me, improved offensive line. We hope. But I think it has to be improved there. And I think with that comes opening up the run game with Fluff Bothwell or Devon Booth or Davon. I don't know. Anyway, they got a really good group of running backs that they can work with. You talk about Blake Shapen. He's probably going to be the go-to quarterback this year, 9 times out of 10, if he's healthy. And, I just think that what really held him back last year, there wasn't good connection on the offense, but also there were some key position groups. And you and I have talked about it quite a bit on this show and going back a few episodes. I just, the offensive line, they have talent. They have big guys up front. They have depth. I'm excited to watch that, but I also am very optimistic that it will be improved to where they can stretch the field a little bit, but also give those running backs the football and let them loose, man.
I think I got to agree with a lot of that for my own excitement. I think that running back room, man, it's going to be a whole lot of fun to see. And the talent they have in the room, those are guys that are going to be able to lean on and get involved in a lot of different ways. I'm also excited, man, for Blake Shapen in year two. And even though he only got 4 games a season ago, to have him back, a quarterback that has now been in the offense for 2 seasons and has gotten to kind of learn it and really understand the why behind it all, and I'll be able to execute at a higher level. I think you got a chance to be much more productive than you were. And it was one of those things that both Lebby has kind of come out and said. He hasn't used this phrasing, but he's kind of basically saying it was a bit of a blessing in disguise that Blake went down, because despite it being as bad for the team as it was and as bad for him as it was, it gave them this year where you get Blake, who's a veteran on the offense, to be able to go out and execute and operate things. And that's going to help this team out a lot, not having to break in a new QB. I think having him back there, I do think the execution and operation of the offense is going to be at a higher level. Something Lebby talked about a lot last season was the idea of missed layups, that there were times they had schemed up yards, schemed up points. Like, we had a guy open for a big play, or this read was there for a nice gain, and we just didn't hit it because we didn't see it. Some of that was Michael Van Buren once he stepped in and his inexperience, but some of it in the first few games was Shapen. And despite being a veteran QB, his inexperience within the system. Now you have a veteran QB who has experience within the offense. I think things are going to click at a much higher level, and I'm excited to see that. What's something, though, that's more of a concern for you when you talk about this offense?
I think I don't know if I'm gonna. I might eat this second part of this comment I have, but I think the concern is definitely when it comes to quarterback play, the health of Blake Shapen. I think that's number one. But I also put, and I kind of question it. I know we've talked about Van Buren and company, Kamario Taylor, the quarterback depth on the field. Like, do you feel confident that the next man up mentality? I talk about that a lot on my channel when it comes to college football. Like, there are just certain teams out there, like, because of how Texas, because of Georgia, Ohio State, uh, Alabama, Clemson, because of how they recruit and use the portal, it's next man up mentality. If someone goes down, it's no big deal. What about if something does happen to Blake Shapen? The biggest concern is, who's your leader? I think we know who's going to be out there, but how much do you trust that he'll come through enough to where he's not going to be the reason that costs you the game? If you get what I'm saying.
It's a little bit of a question, because I don't know that it is settled on who would go out there. So, I mean, obviously Van Buren goes on to LSU, but you bring in a couple guys between
That's right.
Luke Kromenhoek transfers in from Florida State, but then the name everyone's excited about, Kamario Taylor, true freshman quarterback, highest rated quarterback signing in program history. Those are two guys that I know Kamario Taylor had a massive spring game and got people really excited. It sounds like Kromenhoek has impressed in fall camp. So you've got a couple guys that are very talented, who both seem to be good fits within this system that you could turn to if Shapen went down. I will say, from an offensive execution standpoint, I would have some concern. But what I do know is, unlike last year, where State really needed to be able to just, at that point when you had a freshman quarterback step in Van Buren, really just be able to say, okay, can we just lean on the run game and make things even easier on Van Buren? And they got better running the football. Like, they were able to have some games where they ran the ball pretty well. They couldn't do it consistently enough to really take the pressure off of Van Buren. He had a lot of times where, man, it's 3rd and 10. Sorry, you got to stand in and take a hit and get a throw off downfield with shaky pass protection in front of you. I think this year they're going to be better built to be able to run the football and lean on that, which will help a young QB. They may not have to do that if Shapen's in. They may be able to spread it out more and be more of, a little bit more pass happy. Although I do think with the guys they brought in on the offensive line and what they have at running back, they're going to want to run the ball quite a bit. But I do think they have the ability, if they need to just go Hulk smash, they probably are going to be able to this year a little bit more up front. And that would help them if they have to step in with a new guy. Concerns for me, I mean, one, it kind of just goes into that idea. I do wonder about how quickly will the offensive line come together. I have no doubt they're going to be improved. I have no doubt that they should be able to run the ball pretty well with the type of bodies they have in there. But still, you're going to be starting some guys coming in who weren't here in the spring. And, how does that come together for you? And you got challenging games week 2 of the season, Arizona State comes to Starkville, and that's a team that's going to have some really good players in its defensive front. So how well are you going to be able to handle them? So that is a little bit of a question for me. The other thing is, do you have a dude at receiver? I think they've got a lot of guys with some potential. They've got guys who fit the system pretty well. But this was a big topic on Twitter a couple of days ago. At the college level, it tends to matter more about having a go-to receiver than it does having a deep receiver room. This tends to be a position where you want to have a stud that you can always rely on going to and that you can always just scheme up as your primary read, more so than, we have a bunch of options who are solid players. Right now, State's got a bunch of options who are solid players. I don't know that they have a stud, and that's going to be a question. If you want to talk about maximizing the potential of this offense, I think that they need that guy who can step in and be a big-time stud. So, look, those are going to be the big question marks for the offense for sure going forward. But overall, you have to be optimistic about, again, year 2 for Blake Shapen. You have better depth, better size on the offensive line. You have a great running back room. If you can find if that O-line gels together pretty quickly and you find somebody to emerge at receiver as like a true go-to target type guy who is a threat to defenses consistently, then I think this offense can have a really, really nice year and look more like the unit that we were expecting. Let's make some predictions. And we'll start off talking about Shapen a little bit, some statistical stuff. So we're going to assume Shapen is your guy throughout the year. And this first one, I guess, doesn't even hinge on him playing the whole season. But I won't go full total passing yards for the year. I'll do yards per game just because there is a chance he might miss some time. We don't know whether or not State's going to get to a bowl game or not, so we won't include that in here. Let's do an over-under. Over-under per game, 245 passing yards for Blake Shapen. Do we think he finishes more than that per game, or does he finish under that?
Oh, that would have been per game. I think he could come close. I'm gonna go under. Well, actually, we're talking about if Shapen's completely healthy out there, right? Like, assuming nothing goes wrong for him, health-wise.
Yeah, and I guess you do have to assume health a little bit because if he's healthy enough to play but isn't fully there, how much are you going to be able to rely on him? That would be a question. But obviously, if you go, by yards per game, even if you only played one game, he finishes with 300 yards passing. Well, then he finished north of it. But we'll assume over the course, if he plays a whole year, does he average 240? Well, yeah, full year. Does he average 245 passing yards per game?
I want to be right on these, but I don't want to come off sounding like a homer or something, man. I would love to see over, but my gut says to go under, but not completely under.
So you're taking under.
Yeah. Nah, I'm gonna go over, man. I'm too high on these receivers for what they have this year. I gotta go. I gotta go over here. I think with Shapen being back, he's talked a lot this offseason, and you've mentioned before about how he's just trying to make sure his arm is stronger, that he's healthy, that he's all ready to go. It's been his shoulder, all that stuff. He wants to be the leader for Mississippi State. I think he is the leader for Mississippi State. Plus, you bring in some guys. You talk about Anthony Evans, and we'll talk about receivers soon. But Jordan Mosley or Brennan Thompson. You could make a case for a lot of those guys to have a breakout year. We'll talk about that soon, but I got to believe he's going over 245 a game, man. Even if it's not quite 300 and he averages somewhere around 245, I got to believe in it, man.
So I've heard a lot of people who've gone lower on him not having a ton of yards per game because they think State's going to run the ball a lot. They think that And they also look at like nationally within the SEC. There really were not a lot of. I think there were only a couple quarterbacks in the SEC that passed for 245 plus yards a game. It was only like 2 or 3 guys last year. I'm going over. Jeff Lebby last year was the first time in his career where his passing offense did not produce at least 250 yards a game. It was the first time in his career as a play caller that he did not have a quarterback averaging 250 plus yards a game passing. So right away, I think he is going to get back in line with what we have typically seen with Jeff Lebby offenses. Secondly, and I predicted this last season that I thought State would have some pretty lofty passing totals because of the talent at receiver and with Shapen stepping in. I kind of predicted State was going to have to be in a lot of shootouts. And while this is an offense that can be in a shootout while still running the football a lot, they probably are going to have to throw the ball quite a bit in order to get those points. So I think you're going to see – I also think you're going to be more consistently hitting the explosive plays in the passing game. So I'm going to go over this number. I don't think it's a crazy amount to ask for. I think Shapen can have a big year. And, I think he'll end up finishing with over the total that I have set, 245 passing yards a game. I think Shapen's going to have a really nice year as a passer. How about touchdowns, though? We're going to set 23.5 passing touchdowns for Blake Shapen, over or under.
23.5. Oh, man. That one, I could see there being some trouble. Because it's one thing if you can air the ball out deep. It's another story if you're going to be a team that's going to score a lot of points. I still don't know if State's ready to do that this year. I mean, I could see improvement where they up their points per game and stuff, but just barely. I'm going to take the under. I don't know. My gut's saying take the under, man. I mean, I could see the passing yardage going over, but the passing touchdowns I know can be a different story depending on who you're talking about here.
I will also go – I think it's a good line because I think it's going to be pretty close to – I think it could be like 23-24. I will also conservatively go under just because while I do think they're going to have to throw it a little bit more, I see this being a situation where most of the passing touchdowns are going to be big plays down the field. Whereas if they get in closer to the red zone, I do think that's where they're going to want to be able to punch it in and run the football a little bit more.
True.
That would take some passing opportunities off the board. And that's not to say they won't throw in the red zone. They definitely will some. But I could see that number being a little bit lower, even if Shapen has a big year overall through the air. So I'll go, I think, just barely under. I think he's going to be around 23 touchdowns for the season. I'll set that as my number. So
that is a good number though, man, because that's almost right on the money with like 23, 24. I mean, if he could hit the over, that'd be amazing to see. But like you and I said, and especially what you were saying about leaning heavy on the run game and stuff, it's, I mean, best bets, right?
For sure. So sticking with the passing game, who do we think leads this team in receiving? I know you went through a couple guys a second ago. You got a brand new receiving core largely, got a lot of options. Who ends up as the leading receiver on this team?
Boldly go with Brennan Thompson this year. He's just very experienced. Last year he had 19 receptions for 230 yards even. He had 2 touchdowns receiving. But I think, by the way, we are talking in yardage here with leading receiver, right? Or are you talking touchdowns? Because if it's touchdowns, it's a different story. But I think if you're talking yardage, I don't see why it's not going to be Brennan Thompson this year.
Man, you can go a lot of – I'll just say yardage, blankly yardage is what we'll go with. You can go catches, you can go yards. I wouldn't go touchdowns, but we'll say yardage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm sticking with Brendan Thompson.
Yeah, look, Thompson is getting a lot of play this offseason. I mean, like you said, was not overly productive at Oklahoma a season ago, but 2 years ago with Lebby as his play caller was actually going to put up, had he played the whole year, had he been fully healthy, probably would have had a really nice year. And what Lebby says is that if you watch him last year, he felt like he was open quite a bit and they just didn't get him the football. My only concern with him as the leader is I do kind of wonder, is he going to be more than just a deep threat for them? And that is something that I kind of like. But at the time, every pass he catches is probably going to be 20-plus yards down the field. So that could open up some opportunities for him for sure. Man, the popular answer has been Anthony Evans. That's kind of who everyone has gone with because he's the slot receiver, and Lebby's leading receiver tends to be the slot receiver, and he's the starting guy. He just has so little production in his career. I have a hard time with it, man. I will take Anthony Evans just because I'm just banking on he is the starting receiver at a position that Lebby tends to force feed. And I will say that, and I talked about this earlier in the offseason, the fact that Blake Shapen mentioned Anthony Evans by name as a guy that he expected to have a big year does suggest to me there's a legit connection there and that those two are going to be linking up quite a bit. So I will take Anthony Evans to be the leader receiver on the team, but I think you go a lot of different ways here. This is kind of the concern is I don't know if they've got that true guy on the team that is like the alpha you trust to go to, and that gives me some questions. Who's going to lead this team in rushing? They got a great stable of running backs, a lot of talent back there. We think a lot of guys are going to get involved, but who ultimately ends up being the leading rusher? And we're going by yardage.
My yardage. I think it's almost a coin flip between Bothwell and Booth. I think it's almost a coin flip, but I feel like Fluff Bothwell, man, has just been really talked about this offseason. I thought he was great at South Alabama a couple years ago. Last year even was really, really good. 832 yards, 13 touchdowns on the ground off 111 carries, and he averaged about 7.5 yards a carry, which might not seem like much, but
that seems like a lot.
I mean,
that's a lot.
It really does. Well, someone might look at it and be like, "Oh, it's only 7.5 yards." Well, running the football is not all that easy when you're in pads and stuff, and you got 300-pound guys coming at you. But anyway, no, Fluff is my take here to be the leading rusher. I think you could make a case for Devon Booth, but I'm really high on what Fluff could bring to the table.
I'm going to take the other side of that coin, and I will say Devon Booth.
Okay.
I just think his explosive style, I like the way he played down the stretch last season, his explosive style as a tailback. There is a case to be made that sometimes it was a little bit, explosive player bust with him. Either he was going to break off a 30-yard run or it was going to be a 2-yard gain. You need to see a little bit more consistency, but that also comes down to the guys blocking in front of him. And I think that's going to be better up front. I think he's going to be kind of the lead guy. I guess the only question would be if he gets more touches as a receiver because he's very talented doing that as well. And he's going to get more rushes than receptions for sure. I just mean compared to the other backs, could there be more situations where they choose to throw to him while he's on the field as opposed to just handing it off? But I think Bothwell will kind of be more of the short yardage type guy who comes in to really move the change in those spots. So I think if you're going to ask me who leads in touchdowns, I'm going to say Bothwell. But I think Devon Booth is going to be your leader in rushing yardage. I feel decent about that. Who's going to be the newcomer of the offense? And we can go a transfer. We can go with the freshman who's stepping in, who we haven't really seen yet. Who do you think is going to be the newcomer for the Bulldog offense that has the big breakout year?
Without hesitation, I'm going Anthony Evans from Georgia. I know. Look, I don't know how Georgia fans feel about him. I don't know much of was he injury prone or anything, but he did see some playing time at Georgia. He had last year for Georgia 17 returns on punts for 129 yards. I've watched some highlights on him in recent weeks just to kind of get an idea of what the state's going to be getting out of him. And he really does have a lot of great speed. I think, especially in special teams, he could play a really good factor. I've heard that he's also been returning punts this offseason. I don't know how much you've heard on that, Andrew, but I really think he's going to be a game changer as far as a transfer. I didn't really come up with a freshman. I mean, I guess if we're
We'll
coming
get
up
there in
with
a sec.
one, I would go there. But yeah.
Well, you didn't have to pick a freshman. No, it just was like
no, I got you.
I'll do a guy we talked about just a second ago, and I'll say Bothwell. Even though I think Booth is going to be the leading rusher, I already said I think Bothwell probably leads in rushing touchdowns. He's going to get plenty of touches. Just a big-time physical talent who I think is going to be a massive difference maker. And the fact that I know I picked Evans as my leading receiver, but I've got kind of the questions in the receiving core of who are we really going to be relying on. I know Fluff Bothwell stepping in and is going to have a good year for Mississippi State. So I think that's going to be the newcomer of the Bulldog offense. Who is a breakout star? And I guess you could go with the transfer, but I guess we're looking mostly more like guys who are on the team that could take a step forward this year and be making a big impact. Who'd you take as the breakout player of the Bulldog offense?
I'm curious to see. And again, I don't have like the whole offensive line memorized, but they had recruited a guy named Jimothy Lewis, if I'm saying that right. Jimothy. He's an offensive tackle. He is a freshman, I believe, a true freshman.
Red shirt.
Built pretty good. He's what's that?
Red shirt freshman.
He is a redshirt freshman. Okay. Well, he comes actually from IMG Academy, a big school. So kudos to Mississippi State for going down there to Bradenton, Florida, not too far from me, and picking him up. 6'6", 310. We've talked about the offensive line and how you have some guys on that roster that could be put on the field this fall, that will be put on the field this fall. I don't know if he's a guy we've necessarily talked about, but I want to get your thoughts on him, man. I mean, is it possible that we see him see the field? I mean, I've looked him up. I've watched his film and everything. I'm just kind of going bold here and saying a red shirt would probably see some playing time. What do you think?
Well, I mean, he's up to 320 now. So, I mean, he's put on weight with a season within the program. I think, yeah, he's a great choice as a breakout player for sure, because I do think it sounds like throughout fall camp, he's done a good job of competing at that spot at left tackle, and that he has really cemented himself there. And the reason that stands out to me specifically, it's not just, you could say, well, yeah, a guy steps in, wins a job. That happens. Left tackle is the most important spot in your offensive line. You need a guy who's a big-time athlete there. You need a guy who's a big-time player. He has the highest athletic ceiling of any offensive lineman on the team. Being a four-star recruit coming out of high school, highly rated guy as a prospect. And I don't think it's a case where the job is just falling in his lap. Like, he didn't really win it. It's more the other guys lost it. I think he's winning the job because they have other guys on the team between Albert Reese, Blake Steen, Luke Work. All of those guys have starting experience playing tackle. Luke Work started games for you at left tackle a season ago. If you felt that Jimothy Lewis wasn't ready, you could start any of those other guys. So if we think Jimothy Lewis is stepping in to win the job, that means to me he's earning it, and that gives me a lot of excitement about what he's going to be able to do up front. And I think if you give me that guy is reaching his athletic ceiling and is stepping in to start, I feel pretty good about what that offensive line is going to be able to do. Another guy, man, I'll say I think is in for a big year as a breakout, Seydou Traore at tight end. Ended up second on the team in catches a year ago, but the yards didn't jump off the page, only got to the end zone once. I think he's going to get utilized in a lot of fun ways this season. I think he's going to be a big-time pass catcher. I think he could be one of the more reliable receiving threats on the team. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy on third down they're looking to get the football to. So that's someone else I would go to as a breakout guy for sure. Who do you got as the MVP of the offense?
I would go MVP for the offense. A couple different good choices. I put Anthony Evans. I'm really high on what he could bring to this offense this year, and think that he, having played at Georgia, even if he didn't get all the time in the world that he probably wanted to, I think he learned from some of the best, and I feel like his leadership and everything could contribute. And special teams offense. However, I just think he's going to be a big difference maker for the Bulldogs.
I'll go with Devon Booth, and I know I'm kind of going back and forth. I had Booth as my leading rusher, but then I talk about Bothwell as my breakout guy. I think those guys are going to both play a ton, but I think Devon Booth is just going to be such a dynamic player for State. I think he's so impactful both as a rusher, as a guy to the backfield, as a guy in the return game, as a kick returner. I think he gets involved in a lot of different ways. I think he has a massive year, and I think Devon Booth is going to be a really special player for the Bulldogs. And that'd be my MVP of the offense. Even though, Blake Shapen at quarterback, I still think is going to have a really nice year. Couple last over-unders to finish talking about the offense. Over under 425 total yards per game.
As much as I love the offense improving this year, well, 425 yards per game. And that's that is counting rushing and passing there, right? Like we're talking, they move the ball 425 yards. I could see it. I could go right on the money or a little bit over. I think they could do it. The question is with scoring and stuff, but I could see this offense really amped up and ready to go.
Yeah, I'm going to also go over because, like I said, I think Blake Shapen's going to have a really nice year as a passer. I also think they're going to run the ball a lot as well. And it doesn't have to be either or. Like, I think they're going to run more plays, and you're going to see a lot more snaps this year, which will allow them to both run more and pass more. So I'll go over that number. Finally, for the offense, over under 29.5 points per game. Basically, do you think this is a team that puts 30-plus on the board consistently, or are they below that?
I'm pretty optimistic here. I'm going to go over. Even if it's like 31 or 30, like you're still hitting that over. And it's probably not going to be every single game, but there are going to be games where you see them compete. You see them get better each week. And yeah, I mean, they're going to face some interesting teams, some defenses like Texas or whoever, but this is a team that I think wants to score. I think they put emphasis on scoring and getting guys the football and making big plays downfield. I'm going to go over.
I'm going to go under. Even though I do think the yards will be there, I definitely think they might not always result in the points. Kind of similar to what we talked about with the passing. I think in the non-con they're going to have some really big games, but I worry about some of the conference games they play. I just know going through a lot of those games, man, it was like how many times I'm like, man, that defense, and it's just going to give them problems. So that defense has such a massive talent advantage. So I'll go under. I think it's going to be improved. I mean, they were at 25. I mean, you know what? No, I'm going over. I'm changing my pick because I'm sitting here like, well, they averaged at 25 or so a year ago, and it's like,
right.
Adding another 5 points a game, I don't think is that crazy, especially if, like last year, they had a non-conference game against Toledo where they completely wasted an opportunity that they would normally put a bunch of points on the board. They had so many drives that stalled out in the red zone where they should have put touchdowns on the board and didn't. And I think they're going to convert on those opportunities. Yes, this team puts at least 30 points per game on the board.
The thing is like you just said, they had the opportunity last year. And if they are better than 2-10, Andrew, and if they are better than what they were last year all the way around, and even if they take a small step forward, why would you not make that over? Why would you not take that? So I'm glad we agree there last minute.
30 points per game in college is not a lot to begin with. So I definitely think
it's not. Right.
Okay, so we've set our expectation for the offense. We think the offense end up having a pretty good year. What about the defense? Yeah. That's the side of the ball that last year was a disaster. It just did not go well. You had a lot of players out there who just were not simply SEC guys. First-time defensive coordinator. It went poorly. You have a ton of transfers in on that side of the ball. You did bring Coleman Hutzler back at DC, but you made a few coaching changes. You had Vincent Dancy to help you get better pass rush. You had Mike McIntyre and Paul Rhodes as defensive analysts to be sort of veteran presences to help coach some guys up, but also help out Coleman Hutzler a bit. can you take a significant step forward to just being a below average, or maybe just being a bad defense as opposed to an awful one? And does that get you to a point where you can potentially win enough games to take a big step forward? It's going to be the big question. Christian, what are you most excited about from the Bulldog defense?
I think there's a lot to be excited about. There's also a lot to be concerned about, but I don't know. I'm excited to see. Mm, I don't know, man. Like, I'm really excited to see all of it. I'm just excited to see more consistency from them. I think they take big steps forward this year to be more consistent with the pass rush, with breaking up passes. Maybe they get some more like numbers, stats wise. Maybe they get more interceptions or third down, like just getting off the field on third down or something. I don't expect it to be perfect. I don't expect it to be the best in the SEC or the best in the world or anything, but I'm really just excited to see all the improvement. I think you got a lot of good guys out there, and I think they're going to be ready to go.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can be excited all around because they should be better. I'm excited for the linebacker room. I think Zachary Tillman has a chance to be an absolute superstar. I love the addition of Jalen Smith. Darian Gillette could be a guy coming from Texas who could be a lot of fun. I think Nick Mitchell as a returning starter played decently well for you a season ago, so you got some experience there. You look at the guys who are going to be edge rushers at linebacker between Brandon Jennings, Malik Silla, who are going to be some really nice players for State off the edge. And then, man, you put Isaac Smith in the room. He is being listed more as a linebacker this season. And even though he's probably going to be playing mostly the same role that he did a year ago, which was kind of as a hybrid linebacker safety type player, for the purposes of this, I'm including him in the room. That linebacker room, talent-wise, is going to be really good. I think that's one of the better linebacker rooms top to bottom in the SEC, which, again, there's a lot of good linebacker rooms in the SEC, but they got a good group there. I think they're going to get a good pass rush out of that group. I think they got some guys who are some impact players. They got guys who are going to rack up a lot of tackles. I like what they have at linebacker, and you can kind of help build around that unit. What are you looking at as sort of the big concern for the defense?
I think it cut out on my end. What were you saying?
What do you see as a major concern defensively?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it being Mississippi State this year, man, like there's going to be some concerns defensively, but I think just I think my biggest concern is that they don't play 4 full quarters against the teams they need to. Like, there's going to be the games they win. There's going to be the games that they should win and they do and everything like that. But, is that a team like when they play a team like Southern Miss, not to put that team under the bus, but being Mississippi State, I think that's a team that, I could see them playing a really good game, but and I'm not saying this as well, they probably just took their starters out and because they're up by 30 or 40 points. I'm saying, like, even if their starters were in there, I don't know if they would, do they have the energy built up to play a whole game and finish the job? And then I don't know. I have a lot of different concerns for this defense, really, but I'm also very optimistic because I know the talent is there. I know they're coaching with Coach Hutzler and everything is just going very well this offseason so far. And overall, I'm excited. I know they're in a good position. I just hope they're very consistent each week and they can play 4-quarter defense.
For me, if I'm going to look to a spot, it's cornerback, which considering defensive line where it was a year ago, that's another spot to highlight. But they added guys defensive line that I know for a fact are upgrades over what they had a year ago. Does that mean they're going to be good on the defensive line? No, but they might be. I can at least look at what they added and see why it's going to get better. Corner, I don't know that. because they lost their top guy and they didn't bring in a guy that's proven that he's definitely going to step in. You know, Kelly Jones is going to be your number one guy now. That's a guy where it's a lot of potential but not production, and we have to see it turn into production. Jefferson, as a JUCO transfer, heard a lot of good things about him to this point throughout camp. Sounds like that's a guy that's breaking out that they feel good about. But we need to see it on the field. And, you know, you got a couple guys else in the room with, you know, Diego Brumfield, where I don't know. Is that an SEC guy? I genuinely don't know. Dwight Lewis making the transition from NAIA Bowl. A lot of excitement there, but can he be an SEC guy? It is a big-time question at that position. Now, it's going to help them out that I think they're going to get better pass rush. It also will help them out that I don't think they're going to be constantly in a situation of having to – I think the State will stop the run better, which will create more clear passing situations, which therefore means you can just drop more guys into coverage and your corners are going to be helped out a little bit. So I think the overall defense as a whole can help lift up the cornerback position a little bit, but at the same time, those guys are kind of on islands. You know, if you got big weaknesses, you can help out a corner some, but you can't really – if you got a guy who's poor, you can't really protect him. He's going to get picked on all day. And State needs a guy to step up there, and I don't know that they for sure have that to this point. Who do we think is going to be the leading tackler on this team? And I think we could probably both say real quick, 1, 2, 3, it's Isaac Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time. He led the SEC 127 tackles a year ago. And now it sounds like he is going to be playing even closer to the line of scrimmage more often than he was a season ago. Isaac Smith leads this team in tackles. I don't think that's a big question. This one could be more of a discussion. Who leads the team in sacks?
Leads the team in sacks. That – oh. You could go many different ways with that. I'll let you lead off real quick.
I'm going to take Brandon Jennings.
Okay.
At Jack linebacker, so he's playing that edge rush position, sort of hybrid defensive end. I think he showed flashes for State a year ago. Didn't get in the backfield as much as you would have liked, but again, they were kind of in a tough situation with how they had to play defense. I think he's going to benefit from the other guys next to him who are going to be better players along the defensive line. He's going to benefit from the coaching that Vincent Dancy brings in. I think he's going to benefit just from being a second year in the system and State defense as a whole being better. And I think Brandon Jennings, who flashed at moments last year, looks like a guy who could be a big-time player. I think he has a big year rushing off the edge.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I could see it be Jennings. I really don't know who else like you would really go with. I mean, I think his leadership and everything and just what he's what he was able to do last year, I don't see how it's not going to be him if he's fully healthy and ready to go. He's not only going to be the leader in sacks, I think he could overall be a really good leader for that defensive front.
Who do we think leads this team in interceptions? I think last year the leader only had 2, didn't pick off a lot of passes. Does somebody step up and have a big year with interceptions this year?
Leader in interceptions. I could go. I mean, I could see a case. I mean, could you go a linebacker with Tillman?
You could. I mean, he had an interception a year ago, and he's a big play guy. I could see it.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know if there's anyone in the secondary I would bet on. I know he's kind of that linebacker type of guy. He's good in tackling, but he has a really good eye for the ball. I mean, I could see where his leadership and everything plays in and just the way he moves, just his focus. I mean, he's had moments where he probably could have got a couple more interceptions, I'm sure, but he just, didn't come away with any but one. I mean, if things look up, I don't see why Tillman's not a guy like that.
Certainly a possibility, and Mississippi State's had linebackers over the year who racked up some picks. I'm going to go with Jerron Manning at safety.
Okay.
Last year, 3 interceptions for Old Dominion. I think he's going to be kind of playing one of those kind of guys just protecting on the back end of the defense, and someone else who I think is going to do a great job being around the ball, but a guy who has production in his career. It sounds like he's had a great offseason and is ready to step in and be a big contributor. So I think Jerron Manning ends up being the guy who leads this team in interceptions. Who do we have as the newcomer of the defense? The best newcomer for this side of the ball?
Couple different ways you could go here, but I'm gonna go Malik. I'm gonna try to say this Malik Silla
Silla.
from Texas A&M. Silla, yeah, I like him. I've watched some of his highlights and everything. He is at linebacker. I've seen him play. Unless I got the numbers or something mixed up, but I try to watch some of his highlights and everything. Has he not lined up at edge a little bit? I feel like
That's what
he's
he's an
guy
edge
that,
rusher.
yeah. I mean, he can chase the run, get after the quarterback, get some sacks. Uh, he didn't really have big numbers last year. He had 2 sacks and 4 tackles, but he had a breakout year in 2023 where he had 14 total tackles. He only got 1 sack, but I mean, he could still get after the quarterback. And I know Texas A&M has kind of had some issues of their own on defense, and it's sometimes moments like that where a guy like Celia wants to get out and maybe just take his talent somewhere else and where he can just make more noise. I don't see. I mean, I'm sure you got someone else, but I like a guy like Malik Celia.
He's definitely got a chance. He's a big time athlete, and no, the production was not there at Texas A&M, but he showed flashes in the opportunities he got. They had some talented players up in front of him, but again, really good athlete, good length off the edge, about 6'5", I think in the 240, 250 range. So going to be a talented piece for them who I think is going to contribute and playing that same position that Brandon Jennings. Those two guys give you some good options there as those guys rushing off the edge. I'll go with Will Whitson stepping in as one of the defensive tackle / defensive end, going to be kind of playing both those type of spots. That was the best pickup State had as a defensive lineman coming out of Coastal Carolina from the portal. A guy who had a lot of production in the games he played, a guy who's got some early NFL, like Senior Bowl type buzz. This could be a guy that, if with a big year, it was the case going into last year, could have gone to the Senior Bowl had he played the full season. I think he's going to step in and be a disruptor for State up front, and they need a guy who can do that, especially along the defensive interior. So I think Will Whitson has a big year for them. I like him quite a bit. Who breaks out on the defense as the big breakout season?
Big breakout year. Dang, you got me. I didn't even put it in my notes here, so I'm just kind of looking through and thinking. But I mean, because here's the thing with State, man, is like you want to pick the guys we already know, but I mean, what came to my mind was Mitchell, Nick Mitchell. I mean, he had 24 tackles last year, got a pick, plays at linebacker, is a senior. He's very well experienced. I mean, could he possibly find some room in this rotation and be a breakout star that says, "Hey, I've been waiting on my opportunities."
That was 24 solo tackles. He had 80 tackles a year ago total.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and he's going to be a starter probably. So, I mean, he could take another step forward. I mean, I think last year he was a solid starter. If he took a step forward to being a big-time guy, then, yeah, you could call that a breakout. I'll also go linebacker, but I got Takari Tillman. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Just a guy who always finds himself around the ball. Just a guy that always seems to make impact plays. I think getting him on the field full-time as a starter this year will be huge, and I think he's a good pass rusher. He led the team in sacks for 3.5 a season ago, blitzing. I think that's a guy who can make a lot of big impacts for State, and I think he's going to be a big-time force for them in that linebacker room. And with him and Isaac Smith, you talk about Nick Mitchell. Again, I love that linebacker room. I think you've got some really talented players there in the middle of that defense. Finally, who's the defensive MVP? And, I mean, I won't beat around the bush. We already talked about him leading the tackles. We talked about him a bunch. Isaac Smith, I think, has to be the defensive MVP. I guess if you wanted to go another way, we could talk about maybe some of the transfers who step in who end up being truly making or breaking the thing, but I think Isaac Smith just has to be the answer there.
I mean, his playmaking ability and just his role in that defense just seems like it's how do I want to put this? I'll say it. It feels like it's too much, right? Like, not that it's too much for him, but it's too much to where he's not the breakout guy that that's the MVP. I mean, he he's one of, if not the best player on this defense, and I think that if he's fully healthy and ready to go, he'll show that. Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna agree with you there.
I think he's got a chance if playing more close to the line of scrimmage to have negative plays. Last year it was, or creating negative plays, I should say. Last year was a lot of just sort of being that last run stopper, which there was a lot of times it was him going up and meeting guys at the line of scrimmage. But I think you're going to see more tackles for loss. I think he's going to get some sacks rushing off the edge. So maybe some more forced fumbles. I think a big year is in store for Isaac Smith. He had a
The
massive
only
season
thing, real quick, the only thing I want to see from him that we didn't see last year, I want to see if he actually comes away with the ball. He had a couple opportunities every once in a while. He's more the guy that just plays that man on man coverage and just can knock the ball away and stuff. I know, but I want to see if he could be that guy that's explosive enough to create the turnovers to where they get the ball back and don't have to worry about, okay, don't let him in the end zone. Like, just go ahead and get that ball, man. I feel like he could even do some big things like that.
No, absolutely. And I think he's going to have – he already had a massive year a season ago, but I think he's going to be even better this year. All right. Over under for the defense as a whole, 405 yards per game allowed. So that was a lot.
Under.
But they allowed
That is
450
a
something
lot.
a year ago.
No, I'm going under, man. I'm really optimistic here. I'm going under. I mean, it might be in the 300 range or something, but I don't see it going over that.
I'm going to go over.
I can't. You're going to go over?
I am. I think here's my thing. I think the defense will be significantly improved. I do think at a couple of those non-conference games, you will see them perform really well. I won't be shocked if Southern Miss gets some yards on them, though. And I think just the teams they are playing within conference are going to be so good offensively that a lot of those teams are going to have nice days. I think they will play better, but I think a lot of those teams are just going to be matchups to deal with. And I think you're going to see some – I think too many conference games are not going to go their way. And, also I've compared against teams that have played similar styles, and I think I don't like it because I'd love for them to shut them down, but I think they're probably going to give them some yards. So I'll go over 405. Okay. Over under 30 points per game allowed.
That's where that's where I might go over. I mean, I would go under the yardage, but over the points. Because you also got to take in like field goals and stuff, or if the offense is turning it over in the red zone and you set up scoring position and stuff. I mean, that's your own offense's fault there. But I mean, no, they're gonna. Yeah, that's where I'm gonna go over. You said it was 30. Yeah, they're going over allowed.
I'm also over 30. And again, for me, it's not that I don't think they're going to be improved. But I think the schedule they play, they're going to give up some points. And
yeah,
but look, I think they're going to score a little bit more too. So it could be a situation where you have some higher scoring games. I think it's going to look a little bit more in line with, I think, what a lot of people were expecting a season ago. We've talked about the offense, talked about the defense. It's time to make our final predictions for Mississippi State for the upcoming season. And look, it's a difficult schedule, right? They've got 7 top 25 opponents on the slate. Preseason. You've got 4 teams that reached the college football playoff a year ago, between all coming to Starkville, by the way, between Arizona State, Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia. You've got another home game against an Ole Miss team that was just sort of on the outside looking in at the college football playoff. You have road tilts against Texas A&M, who's got high expectations. Florida with high expectations. You go to Missouri, who's coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons. You go to Arkansas, who exists, but, it's still going to Fayetteville. And Arkansas did put 59 on State in Starkville last year. So we're going through this murderer's row of opponents, and it's like, and Arkansas is there as well. But again, Arkansas destroyed Mississippi State and Starkville a season ago, and now you got to go up to Fayetteville. And then you look at some of the other non-conference games, like outside of Arizona State. You open the year in Hattiesburg, a Southern Miss team that is an in-state opponent that is going to want nothing more than to kickstart the era with their new head coach, a head coach that last year won 10 games and won the Sun Belt title, and is now bringing half his roster, including his quarterback, to Hattiesburg to flip that team. They want nothing more than to spoil things for you in week 1 of the season. You have a Northern Illinois program stepping in that beat Notre Dame, the national runner-up, a year ago. Now, as I talked about in my non-conference preview episode, NIU is not the same team this year that beat Notre Dame. But still, you've got a lot of difficult games on this schedule. The over-under win total for the Bulldogs is only 3.5. I mean, so expectations are not high for this team. You've got some really difficult matchups. I think I'll just run through these let's do this real quick. Must-win game on the schedule. I'll go ahead. Southern Miss. You have to start 1-0. You cannot lose to that team in week 1. Mississippi State has to beat Southern Miss week 1. 1, it's setting the season off right. 2, we're going to have problems in Starkville if you lose to the Mustard Buzzards, as we call them. So, and all 10 of their fans that exist, you've got to win that.
Just go ahead and say it, Andrew. You're in the SEC. You don't lose to the group of 5. It's just –
and Mississippi State lost to the group of 5 by a lot last year.
I know they did, but it shouldn't happen. It just should not happen. But anyway.
Yeah, so that's got to be – that is the must-win game. I would say best chance most important game, I think, is week 2 when Arizona State comes to town. I think that game really sets the tone for the season. I won't say it's like you have to win it, but if you want to talk about your chance to really get things rolling, it's that opportunity when Arizona State comes to town in week 2. They're going to have to spring an upset somewhere. The best chance is probably at Arkansas, just as I talked about, because Arkansas is the weakest team of the power conference teams of the schedule, but they're still going to be a real favorite against you. It's a tough stretch, and it's a tough schedule as a whole. And just kind of looking through, I think that opening stretch of games defines the season. The month of September, State has 4 home games. You have that Southern Miss game that's so big, that Arizona State game that's so big. Alcorn State you should beat. Northern Illinois comes to Starkville. I mean, you have to be at least 3-1 through that. And then you get Tennessee coming to Starkville, a Tennessee team that, as we talked about on the last episode, has questions this year, even though they're a big-time team and went to the playoff and a top 25 opponent. That's a massive opportunity for you. So I think that opening stretch of the season really defines things. But it's a difficult slate to manage. So, let's quit beating around the bush, Christian. Let's make our predictions. And I'm not writing this down, so keep track of yours, and I'll keep track of mine.
All
We're
right.
doing game by game for the Bulldogs. Week 1 of the season, down in Hattiesburg. Does Mississippi State do what it should do to Southern Miss?
Yes. I am not a big believer in Southern Miss. Now, I have a guy that I've talked to a lot on YouTube named Sippy Sports Show. Great guy, great content. Love and appreciate him. As he says, Southern Miss to the doggone top. But no matter where that game's played, they're not that good a team. Mississippi State loses to that, it's over, man. It's just I don't see how they come away with a loss there. So I'm gonna go win week 1 on the road.
Look, Southern Miss is going to be better this year with all the pieces they brought in. Braylon Braxton's a good quarterback. They got some good skill talent. A lot of guys from that Marshall defense that was pretty good a season ago step in. I do think, though, Mississippi State has improved enough along the lines of scrimmage. They should do what they should do to a Sun Belt team, and that is just be able to dominate up front. I don't think Southern's defense, even with some of the pieces they added, I know they got some good guys in the secondary, but I also think State's probably got better athletes at receiver. I think State's able to get that win. I do think Southern put some points on the board, but I think Mississippi State comes away. We both got the Bulldogs 1-0. Week 2, as I said a few minutes ago, I think this is the most important game of the year. Arizona State, a top 12 team, one of the favorites in the Big 12 after going to the college football playoff a season ago. Basically, everybody not named Cam Scatabo is back. They come to Starkville. Can Mississippi State spring a monumental upset, or do they take a quick early loss in the season?
Even though it's a night game at home, you would love to watch this game. You probably will watch the game. I probably will. I'm going to say no. I like Arizona State a little bit more. I don't know if I like them necessarily to run the table and win the Big 12 again. I think the Big 12 is wide open and all that. That's another channel, but it's even if Arizona State takes a step back, they're probably a better team than Mississippi State. Could we compete? Sure. But coming away with a win at the moment seems like a bit much.
Reese is buying in, drinking the Kool-Aid to have a start in 5-0, and then sequentially, I can't talk right now, getting to 5-0. Look, if you win this game, you set yourself up for sure. That's why I call this the most important game, because if you do win it, you should go 4-0, because we'll talk about the next couple games here. But you should be 4-0 going into Tennessee, and then that creates just a huge opportunity. Unfortunately, I like Christian. I got to take it as a loss. I think Arizona State's just going to be really, really good. I think State, it's got to be a shootout, because I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Arizona State offense much. And I think right now they've just got more proven pieces defensively to be able to get enough stops. I think State takes a loss. We both have them 1-1. Week 3, Alcorn State comes to Starkville. We'll both say the Bulldogs get the win there. I don't think we really need to discuss it. Week 4, Northern Illinois. NIU, out of the MAC.
That's true.
Beat Notre Dame a year ago, and a MAC team came to Starkville and whipped up on the Bulldogs last year in Toledo. I will say, though, I'll go ahead and make my prediction. Northern Illinois lost basically the entire team. They are a very different team than they were a season ago, and I got a lot of questions about the guys that they're loading in. Thomas Hammock is a great coach. It's a proud program. They got a few nice pieces. Mississippi State should just be able to kind of handle business here. I will take the Bulldogs to get the win.
I will also take State to get the win. The only thing Northern Illinois has going for them in that game is, hey, we got a bye week to prepare. Yeah, that's it. That's all you got. You lost a lot, and you had a great season last year, beat Notre Dame, whatever. You're not winning in the SEC. That's what I say. So give me State.
So we both have State 3-1 through the non-conference, which would already be an improvement from where they were a year ago. They would need one more win to go over the win total, which means finding an SEC win. And obviously they would have to get to 3 SEC wins if we're talking about bowl eligibility, which is going to be tough against this slate. But a huge opportunity in week 5 of the season. Tennessee Volunteers come to Starkville. Even if State's just 3-1, this is a big chance. It's a Tennessee team that, like I said, there are real questions for them. Defensively, they should be pretty good. But that offense has got some major question marks. And this could be should be a packed house, should be a fun environment. I think as long as State does what they should in the wins and doesn't look bad against Arizona State, can the Bulldogs spring a huge upset at home to close out September?
You go ahead. I got some stuff to say, but well, okay. Tennessee should win this game. I think Tennessee is clearly better. They have the Nico stuff this offseason. They got Joey Aguilar coming in. I still think Tennessee is a better team. Therefore, I'm going to give it to Tennessee. But I don't know. Wouldn't you just love to see State win that opener against the Volunteers, man? You hope for the biggest upset of that weekend. That's the same day, by the way, as Georgia, Alabama.
I would thoroughly enjoy it quite a bit, especially because I don't care much for Tennessee. Even though they're not one of Mississippi State's rivals, Tennessee's one of those faces that does a good job of making everyone a rival, just with the way that they are. And our guy Reese in the comments, I know he hasn't said anything yet, but as a friend of Reese, I know he has strong opinions on the Volunteers. And So I look. I would love to see it for sure. To quote the meme, I would love to see it. I think State will be competitive. Um, I think it'll be a hard fought game for sure. Tennessee's defensive talent is probably still going to be too much for State to deal with. And I just think obviously the big question here is does Heupel do what he's done a few times and take a loss he shouldn't on the road? And I could definitely see that coming somewhere along the way. But I think I'm going to take Mississippi State to fall at home, drop to 3-2 in the season. But I think they're going to acquit themselves well. To open up the month of October, State will travel to Texas A&M against the Aggies, an A&M team that I'm pretty high on this year. That's a tough road trip coming off the game against what should be a physical Tennessee team and having to deal with that. And to turn around an A&M team that might be the most physical in the conference. I'll go ahead and I think State – I'm high on Texas A&M. I got State losing that game.
Me too. I'm pretty high on the Aggies. Just think they're in a good position offensively. I think Elko's doing a good job over there, and I'm pretty high on them too. I don't know if they make the playoffs or anything, but 8 or 9 wins seems doable.
So the two of us have State going into the bye week at 3-3, which again means they would have to the last 6 games find 1 win to get over, and we'd have to go 500 to close if you're talking about making a bowl game, which would be difficult to pull off, but you have hope. So you go out of the bye to Florida, another team that I feel pretty good about. Now, I will say for the Gators, I'm curious where that game falls on the schedule for them. It's interesting. That's a stretch for them. They've got Texas at Texas A&M, and then Texas at home at Texas A&M, and then they're hosting Mississippi State. That could be dangerous.
Now, let me ask you, what's after Mississippi State for them? Because could they overlook us?
They have a bye week. But that's the end of a tough stretch. Although they get a bye before Texas. So, they get to rest up for Texas, and then it's like, can you get through that stretch? But that's going to be tough to go on the swamp and get a win.
It is going to be tough. As much as I don't really want to say, well, I'm going to be honest. I don't hate Florida or anything. Being in the state of Florida, you kind of pull for the in-state teams. But, Florida theoretically should win this game and probably will find a way. But this is one of those games where if things go their way, State could pull it off. But I'm going to roll with Sunbelt Billy.
I'll also take Florida. Look, State had a lot of opportunities last year against that defense. I think their defense will be better this year, but I also think State's offense will be better, so that could counteract. But I do think Florida offensively probably be able to run the ball pretty effectively and have a lot of success. So, yeah, we both have State losing that game. So we're both at 3-4 and winless in the SEC. Then the Bulldogs host the Texas Longhorns. Texas coming to Starkville 1 week after, for what it's worth. Well, never mind. They're going to have at Kentucky after. It's going to be Oklahoma and then at Kentucky, and then they go to Starkville. Mm-hmm. Look, I'd love to ruin Arch Manning's debut.
Oh, yeah.
But he already got a win last year against the Bulldogs, and I think he's probably going to get another. I think Texas wins this game pretty easily.
Yeah, no. Look, I'm pretty high on Texas. If it were up to me, man, I think the 2 best teams going into the season, Texas is one of them. I think they got it right in the AP poll with Texas and Penn State, man. So I'm pretty high on Texas. I know everyone else is. I don't care where the game's played. Mississippi State's not going to win this game. Now, could they do some good things in this game? Could they hold them to a 3-and-out? Could they score some points in this game on what could be an okay Texas defense or good enough? Or I don't know, but they're not going to win. So I'm going to give this one to Texas.
Yeah. So we both have the State going into the final month of the season at 3-5, which means if you're talking about trying to find a way to go to a bowl game, it'd have to be a miraculous 3-1 close to the season, which is obviously incredibly tough to pull off. Still just need 1 win, though, to hit that over.
Yeah.
This is the game. They go to Arkansas.
Yes.
The Razorbacks, who look, they destroyed Mississippi State and Starkville a year ago, but this is the most beatable of the SEC teams on the schedule. But you are playing on the road. Christian, is this where the Bulldogs finally get a win?
Let's do it. Ring that cowbell. I'm going to say they go into Arkansas, play a close game, play a good game. I think there's going to be some motivation in this one, man. I just do. I think Arkansas theoretically is a better team. Probably will have a better season or be around the same. I don't know, but it comes down to those two teams on the field. This year, I would take State.
I will also take the Bulldogs. And I understand what Arkansas – I understand every Arkansas fan going into the year is marking this up as a win for them, which I fully understand given the way that last season went. And it's kind of like I think everybody looks at Mississippi State and just has them like that's a win. I can't really blame people. But Arkansas, I think, is going to be significantly worse on defense than they were a season ago. They're losing some really key players. I also think Arkansas offensively could be about the same as they were overall quality-wise, but I think they're going to be worse at receiver. And my biggest concern for State's defense, even for as bad as they were stopping the run a season ago, and that does bother me a little bit against Arkansas because I think they're going to run it well. But State's corners being kind of their big question mark, Arkansas's receivers don't scare me. So I think this is a game where you kind of say, just load up and try to stop the run. And even though I do think Taylor Green could be pretty good for them, so I think this is a game where State's offense is going to be able to have a big day, and I think the defense can do just enough to have a chance here. And I will take Mississippi State to get the upset. So we have State 4-5. We have State winning an SEC game. It'd be their first SEC win since winning in Fayetteville 2 seasons ago, which that would be kind of funny if that's how that happened once again. I don't know, Christian, do you remember that game, 7-3 final score?
That does sound pretty familiar, actually.
I'm one of the people who watched every second of it. It's burned into my eyes forever. But Mississippi State won a 7-3 final score game. I sat in.
What is that, baseball?
Yeah. Look, hey, you give me 7 runs a game for Bulldog baseball this year, I'll take it, man.
All right.
So we get State, we give them a win, but then you have to come back down to earth because you come to Starkville and Georgia comes to town. I think we both are taking the other Bulldogs there.
I hate to do it because I got a lot of Georgia people I talk to in my community, and they drive me nuts, but I love them. Nothing but love and respect, but they're annoying. Give me Georgia. Give me the Dogs.
Yeah, so State wouldn't have lost that. He's talking about that Arkansas game from a couple of years ago. It was just a completely ugly game. I will say this. Georgia they're playing Florida for the cocktail party the week before. The week after, they host Texas. So, 2 of their 3 biggest games of the season are sandwiching the Mississippi State game. So if you want to talk about an all-time letdown, and if Mississippi State's coming off a win, they got some momentum in Starkville, State's going to put up – and State put up points in Athens last year. I'm not going to sit here and tell you State gets a win. Georgia's still going to be too good. I do think it could be a letdown spot, but Georgia gets the win. I'm not going to go so crazy that I predict that type of an upset here yet. So we have State at 4-6. They would have to win out if they're going to go to a bowl game. They go to Missouri. What are you thinking there?
Could be a win, could be a close game. I still think Missouri on the road. If this were at home, that's a different story. But here on the road, I do like Eli Drinkwitz and what he's doing over there. I think he's got some good playmakers and got some guys on defense. I think Missouri's just going to be better. I don't know about that point in the season what their record's going to be, but I don't see Mississippi State easily going in there. I mean, if they're going to pull an upset, it's going to be because Missouri just doesn't show up. But I feel like Missouri could show up for that game.
So Missouri hosts Texas A&M the week before.
Okay.
They're at Arkansas the week after. Sorry, at Oklahoma.
That's the rivalry game.
At Oklahoma, sorry.
Oh,
Which is
okay.
it's a bigger rivalry for what it's worth.
Yes.
Missouri and Arkansas really don't care about each other. Now, Oklahoma doesn't care much about Missouri, but Missouri cares about Oklahoma.
Right.
God, I am so tempted. I don't want to do it. Missouri's defense is going to be really good, and it's in Columbia. And trying to go on the road and put up points on a good defense is just tough to do. I don't really trust the Missouri offense that much, but that's going to be a difficult game to go. That's one that come game time prediction might change. I can see State go. State, I talked about it. They had a chance this past year against Mizzou if they had just hit on some plays early and they missed on them.
Yeah.
But I also think Missouri, a lot of my questions I have about them offensively, they could be clicking at that point in the season. I will take Missouri to get the win. So that's tough. But I think State's got a real chance there. And then you close out the year with the Egg Bowl in Starkville on Black Friday. Ole Miss team with a lot of question marks going into the year, but obviously still some pretty decent expectations. Christian, when it's Bulldogs versus Rebels, who comes out on top? Can State get their first win since Mike Leach and get their first win in Starkville since 2019?
Yeah, so Ole Miss has won the last two. They also lead the series all time, for those that don't know, 66, 49, and 6. And Ole Miss and Mississippi State have not been known to hold other than, well, let me say this. Longest win streak in the series, period, comes to Mississippi State at 13. Longest for Ole Miss at 6. That all aside, when you get together for rivalry weekend and Thanksgiving and turkey and cranberry sauce and all that stuff, the record books, you can burn those, right? It's a new year. It's a new game. It's different players. This is Lane Kiffin we're talking about, by the way. He's I'm going bold here. I'm going Mississippi State. I just, man, Jeff Lebby is going to have these guys motivated for this game. I just feel it, man. Like, Ole Miss doesn't have defense. They lost some of their key players. They did bring some back, but they lost Jackson Dart and everybody. But, like, I don't know, man. You're coming off a bye week to prepare for this. Like, you're going to have some time to get ready if you're Mississippi State. Now, granted, at the same time, so is Ole Miss going to have time to get ready. But it being in Starkville on rivalry weekend on Black Friday, like, these players for Mississippi State are going to be amped up and ready to go. They're going to be playing with a lot of fire and emotion.
Have to.
Don't do it.
Well, look, here's the thing. I'm not sold that Ole Miss is going to reload from where they were a year ago. I think they are taking a step back. I think defensively they're going to take a pretty significant step back. Offensively, they have big concerns about their offensive line. But there's a ton of belief in Austin Simmons. Their skill talent's probably still pretty good.
Yeah. I
talked about this in the last episode. Ultimately, the concern for both teams right now, when you talk about there's a concern for both teams with the offensive line. And like a State, we feel good it's going to be better, but is it going to be so much better that it's a unit they can lean on throughout the year? And Ole Miss kind of has similar problems when you talk about their offensive line going into this season. But the ceiling, I think, is higher for the Ole Miss defensive line. And State's defensive line is going to have more experience. State's got more guys who are probably a little bit more proven on the defensive line when you consider some of the transfers that they're bringing in. The talent level, though, is higher for the Ole Miss guys. And I know they're really excited about that group. And if you told me by the end of the year that group is clicking, I can see it. I can think that I think State offensively elsewhere, like I think they can have a chance against the Ole Miss defense. I think Ole Miss's offense against State's defense probably going to be able to have some success. But State's defense has played them well last year for what it's worth. I'm going to take Ole Miss for right now, just because I don't want to sit here and just do like I'm just Mississippi State fan predicting Ole Miss. And it's not even about being a homer. That is probably still the better team. But I think State's going to have a chance for sure. And look, as I talked about, and I kind of on the fly, I looked at Mizzou. I just don't believe in that team that much. I think the month of November, State's got some opportunities that if they do get some wins early in the year, I could see them get some things going late in the year, maybe make a push towards a bowl game. So, look, you've got them 5-7 with 2 conference wins. I've got them 4-8 with 1 conference win. Mm-hmm. I do think, though, this team is going to be legit improved. I do think this team can be a bowl quality team, and I think they could challenge for bowl eligibility if things break right. Again, some of those games late in the season, like I love where that Missouri game falls, and I didn't even realize that until just now looking at the schedule. I'm not going to change my prediction just yet, but I could see an upset happening there for sure. So, you know what? Whatever. 5-7. I'm not gonna change the Egg Bowl. The Missouri game, I'm gonna give Mississippi State. I don't buy Mizzou.
Nice.
If they find another win, I'm gonna be a homer, fine, and say 5-7. I won't do the Egg Bowl. I won't do that one. But I'm gonna take State to go to Columbia and pull the upset. Just because, I think that game falls in a place for Missouri where they have problems, and I don't believe that team is actually going to be incredible. So that's probably stupid of me for sure, but whatever. Let's like 5. I'm not talking about a team going to a bowl game. I'm talking about going 5-7, right? Like I can be a little bit optimistic on the team. So I guess ultimately both have State 5-7, 2-6 within the SEC. This show went a lot longer than we thought it would. We spent a whole lot of time talking about the SEC scheduling news, but that was breaking news that needed to get talked about. This is an over 2-hour podcast. We know that was a lot to get into, but man, there was a lot to cover. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
My voice is about shot, so I need to get a little bit of a break here. But it's week 0. Game week returns next week for the Bulldogs. We're going this time next week, we're hopefully wrapping up maybe a call-in show. I don't want to say it yet for sure. We still got to figure things out. Next Monday, though, we're breaking down the Bulldogs. So be back here Monday night, 5 or 6 p.m. Central Time. Haven't decided fully yet on the exact time, but 5 or 6 Central Time or sometime in between. We're going to be back talking about the Bulldogs against Southern Miss to open up the season. Give us our full thoughts on that breakdown. Give us our predictions for that game. Get ready to start off the season and what we're hoping for. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. So for those of you who are here throughout, we appreciate it. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, all that fun stuff. Turn on that notification bell so you know when we go live. And as you can see, these shows might be able to go in and out with the amount of time that we're going to be doing on these podcasts and not miss too much. But we're looking forward to keeping this thing rolling because the season is back. Next time we're together, it's going to be game week. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Christian, for hopping on, and we'll see you guys next time.
See y'all.